Hi there, I am the CRM Ninja, and on today's episode of the Oops Factor, I have Angeliki Patsiavou. Welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you for having me. Very excited.
It's wonderful to have you on.
Lovely.
So people may be wondering why I seem to be having the crap kicked out of my head.
Yes, they might want to know that there's a story.
Yes, and I do understand that you do kickboxing.
Absolutely. So great choice for a background. So that's true. Since beginning of last year, I started kickboxing. It was a lifelong dream of mine, really, because I've always loved martial arts and watched everything from UFC to WWE to anything that was out there.
Wow.
And I was a big McGregor fan, despite the whole career thing. And yes, proud Irish fan. But anyway, I've always admired the sport, but I never thought I had it in me until the beginning of last year, where I thought, you know what, this is my New Year resolution. Let's do this. And it's been a load of fun. I've been able to get my first belt as well, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah.
So what's drawn you to martial arts? Is it kickboxing? Is it the ability to kick the crap out of anything and anyone?
Don't worry, your head is safe. I think it was a combination of truly admiring the skills and the discipline that it takes, and what you have to do with that. But also, I think for me, it's an outlet. I have a lot of adrenaline that I don't know how to direct. I was never a person who enjoyed the gym or some of the other sports. And this really did feel like something great. And to be honest, as a woman living in London, sometimes you feel like having self-defense skills can come in handy. So it really combines everything into one nice little package.
That is true. That is true. Now, for those who may be thinking that Angeliki is a very dangerous jaguar, for instance, prowling around London at night, kicking the living daylights out of people, I do understand as well you're a singer.
Indeed. So if I do beat the crap out of someone, I will sing through it. So there you go. It's a full service. I am indeed. So another interesting, I guess, fun fact that some people might not realize. But anyway, so I am a singer and songwriter with a little bit of guitar skill as well, but singing is my main calling. And this is one of my absolute passions in life. Truly, for me, music, putting singing aside for a moment, is a way of breathing for me, a way of expressing and staying sane. And it has been the case since I was 13.
Wow.
So it started early. Although at the time it was poetry, and it started as a way of trying to express myself because of some kind of hardships at the time, but it kind of evolved into music, songwriting, and singing itself. So, and that kind of matured around just before uni, really, so around 18 years old. And my passions are rock and metal music. So I'm a big metalhead. I know you cannot tell, and you probably think I'm a bit of a pop music lover, but actually there's a reason why I have long black hair. I will headbang the life out of me. In concerts, I will be at the front, feel the sweat, get into the mosh pit if needed, and really love life. So
crowd surfing?
No, that's just a death sentence for a woman, not really. For many reasons. It's pretty much a non-access pass. So not done that. But otherwise, let's just say that outside work, my main kind of guilty pleasures and where I spend most of my money are traveling, concerts, and merch. So that's kind of like where all the budget goes.
Wow. I would have never pegged you for like metalhead, and especially not headbanging.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this hair cannot go to waste, there's a reason.
And yes, word of warning and health and safety hazard to anybody within about a meter of it.
No, I think, to be honest, there's a lot of men that have equally long or longer hair, and it's an equal fight for sure, especially at the front, no holds barred, so should be okay.
Noted. So from kickboxing, singing, and headbanging to the Oops Factor, what do you have to share with us today?
So I'm super excited to be on it because I think that oops events are part of life, whether it's personal life, work life, or any part. And it's quite empowering to talk about them and being vulnerable in a way and quite open and honest. It gives you the power to understand what went on and maybe inspire some others with some food for thought. So really, really thank you for having me. So there's a couple of stories, let's say, that I would like to share with you, and hopefully they will give some interesting points. The first one being how to really be diplomatic in the workplace with rude colleagues and really pressuring situations, which, let's be honest, everyone has and will be facing. It's something you can't escape. And I'm really glad that I'm able to smile about it now, because when it happened at the time, I was fuming beyond comparison. Even though I didn't show it inside, I was a dragon waiting to be unleashed. Anyway,
yes.
Exactly. So the point is, and the lesson of the story is how to rise above when people are going really low and to maintain control. So how it all happened is, in one of my previous roles, I was a trainer for the software that we were using in terms of agile projects and ticket management. And so I was kind of like the go-to SME. And because it was a global team, I was asked to go train a foreign team overseas to help them set up the project, learn about the system, to really onboard them and whatnot. And I was obviously chuffed. I love traveling. It's part of why I enjoy being in global teams. And also I love teaching. Even though I was never properly a trainer myself, I just really enjoy translating complex situations into simple lessons. And I really love conveying that. So anyway, so this was set up in advance, 2 months in advance. Everyone had agreed, committed to the workshop, which was meant to be live training plus.
It was organized properly.
Some kind of, it was very organized. There was a budget, obviously, for me to travel overseas. Everyone had committed to sorting other licenses, credentials to log in and whatnot. And it all looked great. The whole point was to do 2 different sessions with 2 different teams, spend a whole day on it, and happy days. Anyway, so so by we, I mean me and a colleague who was native in the language went there. Obviously, the training was going to be in English, and that was agreed as well. The system is in English anyway, and I do my job in English. So that was also agreed. And that's a key point to this story. But let's move on. Get there on the day. The first training session was at 10 a.m. We are all pumped, ready to go. I go with my colleague in the room a little bit early just to set up. And it's about 10 o'clock. There was literally no one there. I was expecting about 20 people. And I thought, well, what are the chances they're all late together? 5 past 10, 10 past 10, quarter past 10. This is when the concern is rising. You're thinking, what is going on? Where is everyone? Let me not go
are you in the right place?
Yeah, actually, that did cross my mind. But anyway, turns out that team had actually moved offices to another place in that city, never told anyone, never declined the invite. I found out through the grapevine, through a third party. And what's even better and almost impossible to believe is that office somehow had no conferencing abilities or even any signal. Now, unless it was in a cave, I was really struggling to believe it. But bottom line is they just disappeared. So that was not a fruitful time. And of course, my manager is trying to check in an hour after, and I'm on a call with him. And he's like, so how did it go? He was so excited and motivated to hear a great response. And I'm like, well, it didn't go really. And he's like, what do you mean? You sound cryptic. And I'm like, well, there's nothing cryptic about this. The session literally didn't happen. No one showed up. They just left the office and never told us. So obviously he's shocked. And what can you do? Who else wouldn't be? Yeah. But we thought, let's power through. There's another session in the afternoon. We're going to give it our best and it's going to be amazing. You know, all the positive things you tell yourself not to go insane. Moving on comes the 4 p.m. session. And this time, all the 25 odd people show up. And I'm thinking, this is incredible. This is my time to shine. It's all coming to place. So obviously the slides were up. I was just preparing to start. The intro slide was up there. And this lady turns around, literally looks almost into my soul, the way she was staring at me. And she's like, oh boy, why is this in English? And I said, what do you mean? We had agreed that the training would be in English. The system is in English. And obviously I speak English.
Did she ask the question in English?
Yes, she did. So this is a kind of, I don't want to reveal too many details.
That's fine.
But this is a country that can speak English, but also their primary language is different, and they're quite preferable in that. Anyway, so she just looks at me in English and says, if the training is not going to be in our language, we're all going to leave. There's no point for us to be here otherwise. Literally,
Whoa.
in a very straight, as rude as can be voice. And let me tell you, I lost my breath for about a few seconds. And all I could do was just look at my colleague, because the other option was to actually just erupt. Let's put it that way. I just couldn't believe.
Was this person a senior person by any chance?
Not really. But there's always cultural norms in place. And it was that kind of place where it's almost acceptable to be rude, and it's acceptable to be that direct to the point of confrontation. And I have heard rumors about it, but the thing is, I've never been to that country before for work, only for leisure. And you can't really know if the rumors are true unless you're confronted with them. Turns out they were even worse. So what happened after was sort of a miracle, let's say, because it could have all gone south, like super south.
Right.
And probably someone in my place would have stormed out or just left all the way. So to begin with, I took a deep breath, and that's something I always advise: take a deep breath, find a way to calm down, whether it's your happy place, like find your happy place mentally, because otherwise you'll find a very unhappy place in front of you. So I did
lots of people watching this, by the way, who may be trainers, just take a little box of chocolates in with you, because for a lot of people, chocolate is a happy place, leaving aside the fact that it kicks off serotonin in the brain. So
absolutely,
I take it with
dark
me.
Chocolate. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially dark chocolate, super healthy for you.
I attribute to the fact that I passed my driving theory test, which was on a computer simulation one, because of chocolate, because I had 3 chocolate bars before I went into it.
If there's a science and proof behind it, who am I to judge?
I did. Anyhow, back to, yes, deep breath.
Back to the story. So first of all, I cannot advise this enough: deep breath, try to compose yourself. Secondly, I thought I need to take control of this situation, because even if they're behaving ridiculously, I still am representing my team, and I still want to make something out of this trip.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, it's fight or flight, right? I'm either going to find an alternative and a compromise that would lead to some outcome that is semi-positive, or it's flight. It's all going to kick off. Best case, I stormed out. Worst case, it gets fully confrontational. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to do that, because even if they're going low, I'm going to go high. So with that in mind, I say, well, you know what? It is your lucky day. And I use specifically those adjectives because I thought they need to know that what I'm about to propose is a favor, regardless of how they're behaving.
Okay.
So I said, it's your lucky day. I actually do speak your language. This was not part of the deal. Nevertheless, I will compromise by delivering the training in this language. I will not assume that I will know all the terminology, because we're talking about technical terminology, and also I'm not a native. So I will use the help of my colleague here, and we will do this together. Nevertheless, just bear in mind that this was not what was agreed. The system is in English also, and we have to find a middle way.
It. I love it, the fact that you've agreed to do it in their native language, while the system and what you're going to show them is still in English.
Exactly, which is mental, right? Now, here's a fun fact for anyone who's watching right now. I have never used before that language in business. I learned the language back in high school. I maybe used it a couple of times, and that was it. Now, I speak 4 languages, and the way my brain is wired can very flexibly switch. That doesn't nevertheless mean I can deliver a technical business presentation, right? Without any preparation, mind you. And I took a massive risk. So I guess the second lesson is, sometimes in life you have to take risks, and I guess we all know that. And I was risking my personal reputation, by making a fool of myself, my team's reputation, by them thinking, who is this kind of person? And obviously it could still anger them.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what, here goes nothing. And turns out I somehow managed to deliver the presentation to the point where by the end they all said, oh, your foreign language was perfect. Why were you worried? Obviously massive weight lifted, but at the same time I had felt cold sweat like never before. And it was a big mental, but it did pay off. And thankfully, it finished on a positive note. But my third advice in those situations, just because you hit some kind of positive medium, don't leave it there. Give feedback to your peers, to your team, to your leaders, because what happened, putting the positive aside, was unacceptable. No one should behave like this. You shouldn't take lightly the fact that someone put the effort and the budget to do something like that. And also, this is not right at any workplace. And I'm quite supportive of addressing this kind of issues directly. I don't think we should mince some words. Of course, be diplomatic, be polite, but nevertheless, I don't think we should do anything but address them head on.
Great. So I have one question.
Interesting. Go for it.
Did they invite you back to deliver more training in their native
so
language?
They didn't, but they did give positive feedback to my manager. And obviously he was surprised considering he knew the background to all of this. And he had warned me that team is problematic. But again, it's very different when you get warned in the background versus when you see the problem yourself. So he was super chuffed that it actually worked out considering the circumstances. And he was very impressed with the way I was handling it, because I don't think anyone can prepare you for these situations. It's a little bit of luck and a little bit of self-restraint from just going ballistic. So I guess bottom line is keep calm and breathe, find some kind of alternatives to maintain control over the situation, and never stop yourself from addressing it afterwards. It's not the right time during, but also forgetting about it altogether and moving on is not right. It's disrespectful for yourself, your team, and everyone around you.
Well,
so that's the first incident.
I have to say that I think that's wonderful that you've come on to share that with us.
Thank you. It's quite a powerful story. If you lived through that story with my colleague, well, ex-colleague at this point, we talk about that story and that trip to this day. And of course, we laugh in the beginning, then we fume a little bit, and then we think, wow, isn't life random?
Definitely.
So yeah, it was a very interesting scenario.
There
is another one that I wanted to share with you.
Go on.
Sorry?
Go on. Yes, you can share something else if you'd like to.
Yes. So the other one is a little bit more about project work, and obviously the buzzword of Agile, working in Agile teams, working with the business and conflicting requirements. And I think it's an interesting story as well to share, because it's something that a lot of people can relate to, apart from the fact that we all work in some kind of Agile teams, or at least trying to. The fact that there's conflict in terms of what the business may want and what other teams may want is also very natural, and how to handle it. Obviously, I'm not going to say I'm some kind of perfect master in it, but just a few stories to kind of paint the picture, although I've only going to share once. So this particular story is when I worked as part of a product team that was in a transformation program to be able to deliver enhancements to a CRM system. And don't we all love a bit of CRM in our lives? So I was part of a product team that was part of a wider program. We were all delivering as part of the same monthly release schedule. And of course, even though we worked individually within the product team, we all had to collaborate together to deliver that monthly slot. So we ultimately depended on each other to be able to be on time. Anyway, so in one of those lovely months, my team was working on an enhancement for an integration with a compliance tool. Now, this is a scary word sometimes, I know. It's all about some legal fancy stuff, and
let's not dwell too much on the compliance side of
it. Maybe not, but either way, there was some requirements that just weren't understood, because the business had a set of requirements, but then that compliance team has a different set, and that was not all understood. So the release was meant to start on a Saturday. On a Friday lunchtime call, we were doing a playback just to make sure that what we had developed was fine with that compliance team. Turns out they hadn't even heard we were doing this type of work. They hadn't seen the requirements the business gave, and clearly had a lot of questions, and worse, were claiming that it was just not compliant. So their first reaction was, it's a no-go, stop the whole release. Now, stop the whole release, it's a very heavy sentence, especially because stopping the team's release meant stopping the whole program's release, because it all went together. So, you either stop everything or progress with everything. So the first, and obviously the product owner was leading the call. I was there to do the demo, and I could see how, everyone was just losing it a little bit. There was a lot of pressure. And the thing is, they're the kind of thing you can't negotiate with. It's one of those places where you just have to go with what they say. And the first reaction was, in our minds, we didn't say it, oh boy, this is kicking off.
I can imagine.
Now, that call lasted a few hours. By the time we were trying to find a solution, it was about 2 p.m. UK time. And obviously a lot of people, it was a Friday, a lot of people had either logged off, about to log off, and more importantly, other teams that were working overseas had definitely logged off. So it was almost impossible to stop. And that would have come at a price, a very big price. So what I really admired in that situation is that both my colleague and I were very calm and tried to negotiate rather than just say, yes, okay, we're stopping everything, or start panicking like headless chickens, which could have very easily a solution. And I really have to respect my colleague for handling it that well. And so what we did to begin with is said, it obviously explain your position. Why is it so hard for you to just press pause? Because you can't assume that the other person in front of you understands. They understand their position, but you have to communicate to explain what's at risk and what would happen if you went with that solution. Now, putting that aside, you have to find a way of compromise. Now, any solution won't be perfect for both parties, but find at least a middle ground. So we went with a proposal whereby we wouldn't stop the release because of all the problems that come with it. But, and also the technical, it wasn't about, someone risk accepting. It was also about the fact that technically it was impossible to find enough people to help us stop it. And obviously that's way more problematic. So putting that front of mind, we said, okay, we will proceed with the release. And this is why it was important that I was at the call from a change management perspective. I said, I'm going to remove every presence of that material that showcases this feature. So really, because it's a new feature, no one can find out about it if no one has publicized it. And obviously, because it's totally new, people wouldn't even know how to get there. So it's important to have that technical understanding to explain exactly how the feature works and give that peace of mind that if you remove any communication material, users won't know about it. And obviously, because there's always the odd person that is inquisitive enough and will bump into it, we also propose a secondary measure whereby we would monitor usage of that feature and report to them daily until we were able to apply the
put a release out that actually fixed it
a week after. Yes, so a combination of remove presence of all features around it, and obviously have a daily monitoring call, which was as good as it could get. And ultimately, after a lot of negotiations and convincing, it worked. We convinced that team that we could go ahead. Obviously, massive weight lifted off our shoulders, and almost like a We Are the Champions soundtrack was playing in the background in our minds, because we really felt like the champions.
I know somebody who could sing it.
Exactly, I could have sang it. Damn. Anyway, so then another interesting journey started for me, because that was left on me to remove presence from every single piece of material that I had prepared and also automated to start in a few hours. So it was a race against time, not just to remove material myself because I had access to certain systems, but big organization, big team, I had to work with a lot of other people to be able to remove such presence. And of course, with communication, you don't just make changes without approval. So then new round of approvals, and it was just madness. I started that piece of work at 5 p.m. Thankfully, I had some colleagues that were kind enough to stay behind and help me out, because it really wasn't possible on my own. And of course, program a different kind of cycle for that material to go out. All in all, madness, but it worked out. And you know what was the bonus out of it? That compliance was so impressed with the way that my colleague and I handled the situation, how we were able to be truly agile, not just in fancy big letters, but truly in the meaning of how to turn things around so quickly, that we made some good friends in some high places, to put it mildly.
It's very helpful. Always good to have.
Exactly. And which meant that in the future, when we needed a favor, whether they had to approve something quicker than usual, or just get some kind of support that was a bit more favorable, it was there. So I guess the lessons from to begin with, diffuse the situation, because communication and negotiation can lead somewhere at the end of the day, instead of just giving up and saying, oh boy, like, might as well have a panic attack.
That's true.
And the second is, there's always a middle ground if both parties are keen to see it. So how do you make good enough colleagues and friends of someone to be able to reach that place, which is complicated, but I think building a strong network of trust around you is very important to get you there. And
totally
ultimately, using that network to also coordinate the actions, especially when you have to turn around something which sounds like almost impossible. So to leverage that collaboration, because otherwise, what's the point of being part of a team? You might as well be a lone wolf in the world. And this is why I love being part of a team, because I think there's such a power in being part of a unit. And also, I mean, I've personally enjoyed leading teams as well, even informally, because just bringing everyone together and being a cheerleader for them as well. Because sometimes I describe myself as a very bubbly cheerleader kind of person, but this is because I love leading people through inspiration and seeing them come together. So I think there's a lot to do with that, especially in those oops events where everything just seems to hit the fan and you just don't know if you can escape on time. So these were really the two stories, and hopefully gave some interesting food for thought for how to address these situations, no matter whether it's your personal or work life. Yeah,
definitely. Well, Angeliki, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing those with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and yeah, great times.
It's been wonderful having you on. Viewers, we hope that you've enjoyed the important points in these stories. Feel free to check out the rest of the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, and take a look at the blog. And if you would like to come on the show, hit the link in the description below, put in your details, and I'd love to have you on. But above all, have a wonderful day.